All right, we're live.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, March 13th, 2023. This is a regular meeting of the Weston Board of Education. We had intended to hold this meeting in person. We hold one meeting a quarter in person, but in light of the upcoming inclement weather, we decided to do this by Zoom, and we will hold the in-person meeting at our next meeting in April. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we all want to say the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Makes me feel very youthful when I do that for some reason. The third item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. It's the meeting minutes from our meeting on the 13th of February, of 2023. Are there any changes or comments on those?
I didn't find anything.
Anyone else? May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 13th, 2023 meeting of the Weston Board of Education?
I so move that the Weston Board of Education approve the meetings for the minutes of the Weston Board of Education from the February, where's the date?
13th.
13th meeting.
Great. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor, let me just say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Terrific, thank you. Our next item is to hear from the Student Board of Education representatives.
Hi. So right now we are starting our Portrait of a Graduate presentations, which all the seniors are doing this year. And I think everyone's excited for them.
I remember last Board of Ed meeting, Emma and I were telling you guys about our Super Bowl drive and the assembly that went with it. The update to that was that it was widely successful. We got over the 3 schools that contributed, the middle school, the WIS, and the high school. We got over 1,000 pounds of donations, which all went to person at the beginning of break. So that was pretty good. And then besides that, right now we have a swap shop for clothing going on in the high school, which is basically where students bring in an article of clothing to trade and they take one home. And it's just like a good community building event that we're doing. And that's basically about it.
Well, that's great. Any questions for Emma or Josh?
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to tell you my son, who's a sophomore, was super excited about the whole swap, the swap meet, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, for the clothes. And I think it's a great idea, especially in light of, the need to recycle so many things. And I think that was just a fantastic idea. So great job, guys.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Moving on, the 5th item on the agenda is public comment. Dan, is there anyone on the line?
So, yeah, there are some people connected. So if anybody would like to make a public comment on the bottom of Zoom, you should see a button that says raise hand. Please go ahead and click on the raise hand button. We will then promote you to a panelist. You'll just have to agree to it. You'll reconnect, and then you'll be able to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and go ahead with your public comment. So we'll just give it a few moments to see if anybody who's connected to the meeting has a public comment. And it doesn't look like we have anybody who has raised their hand.
Great. Well, thank you. Item number 6 is new business. Lisa, the first is new hires, resignations, retirements, transfers.
Correct. Thank you, Steve. I'm very pleased to announce that we do have a new hire in the role of Assistant Director of Pupil Personnel Services, grades 4 through 8. Amy Spicer will be joining with us right after April break. This is a new position, and we're thrilled. Hopefully it will be great this spring, transitioning to that special ed PPS team. And I know that Ms. Edwards is very pleased about that new hire. We have no retirements, and we do have several resignations. The first resignation is Dawn Marie Gilly, who is a pre-K para at Hurlbut, it was effective last week. She took a position in another Connecticut school district. Amy Kreutzer is a special ed teacher at the middle school. She will be leaving us the first week of April. She also took a position in another Connecticut school district. And finally, Christian Albrecht, who is a board certified behavioral analyst at the intermediate school, left us late last week. She has actually decided to take a position outside of the realm of education. And that's it for the consent agenda.
Any questions for Lisa? The next item is the discussion of.
We need a
just have a motion.
Oh, you have a motion, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I move that the Weston Board of Education accept the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor, to say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Portrait of a graduate.
Yes, Portrait of a Graduate is next. And as we heard from our board reps, Emma and Josh, the senior class is very excited, as I think many of us are, to hear their presentations. I'd like to ask the principal of Weston High School, Megan Ward, to talk about this exciting new addition to the high school program. Megan?
Thank you. Should I share my slides, or are we going to share them here? I have a few slides.
You're more than welcome to share them if you'd like, Megan. You have the ability to share.
Okay. It's telling me I can't.
Well, look at that. I lied. Hang on one second. Okay, try now.
Can you see that?
Yes.
So let me just, is that better? Let's see this show. Okay. Whoop. So as our seniors, Emma and Josh just shared, this has been a work in progress for a few years now. I want to give a huge shout out to Julianne Gavoni, one of our assistant principals, and Vanessa Eisman. Julie has been working incredibly hard on putting the Portrait of the Graduate portfolio together and creating the structures for student success and teacher success at Weston High School. So as you know, or as you may know, there's a mastery-based assessment, a 1-credit assessment per the state that is required for all graduates. Weston High School, over the years, determined that graduates of Weston High School would fulfill that requirement by developing a 1-credit Portrait of the Graduate portfolio. And this portfolio takes into consideration the competencies of communicating with purpose, expressing creativity, solving problems, caring for others, caring for self, and thinking critically. And over the last couple of years, students have been working through advisory and other periods of the day at Weston High School to look at the ways that they have worked as students in Weston High School to develop these skills. So as I just said, we have a number of competencies. We have 6 competencies that students work towards, and they put together a portfolio, which is a web-based portfolio. They have a template that they follow through Google Sites, and they provide documentation to show how they have met these competencies throughout these 4 years, whether it's thinking critically, communicating, solving problems, expressing creativity, caring for self, or caring for others. And once they have chosen those artifacts that they want to incorporate in their portfolio, they then have to write a reflection on how they feel that artifact represents how they met those competencies at Weston High School. And as I said, this is a work in progress. They were meeting in advisory, so with their senior teacher advisors, and working through the program that was developed to support them in developing these portfolios. We're having advisories as needed, as you heard me say in previous meetings. And what we've done is create advisories every week. We have determined that we need at least 1 advisory per month focused on Portrait of the Graduate. So each month, and that advisory will typically be about 45 minutes. So for the last few months, each month, the seniors have been focused on culling their work and choosing their artifacts and writing those reflections and putting it together into an online portfolio. Our Portrait of the Graduate really depends on our teachers as those advisors as well. So in 9th grade, there is an introduction to the Portrait of the Graduate work later in the 9th grade year. And then 10th, 11th, and 12th graders have various lessons that they work on so that by the time that they are seniors, they can get to that culminating portfolio. So the teachers throughout the course of the advisory support the development of their Google site as well. As you know, we also have a Portrait of the Graduate coordinator. Ms. Eisenman is our coordinator, and she's done such a fabulous job creating the lessons and timelines and communicating with our advisory teachers to really help our teachers and our students step by step through the process, which has really led to incredible success as we head into this week of presentations. She has also worked with Ms. Gavoni to create the Portrait of the Graduate site template. So students have that template to work with as a basis, and then they can get more creative with it if they choose. And she also works with Ms. Gavoni to monitor student progress toward their final product. And just this morning, we were calling a few students down who we knew just needed to tweak a few things, or sometimes just sharing things so that our panelists can see the work that they've added to their portfolio later in the week. So the outcome is about to occur this week. So as you know, it's very exciting. This is the first time this year that we've done it this way. We're using that conference schedule. So really looking at pairing the conferences that are occurring in the elementary schools and looking at how we could use that to, one, invite our community panelists in, make sure that we've allowed time for the advisory teachers to be present for their student discussions, and also other teachers to also participate in those panels. And we've assured students that this is not a presentation. We really want them to develop those critical thinking and communication skills to come in and to be able to represent their work and also have a discussion. So we provided them with a number of questions that could be asked to help further the conversation, but ideally students are coming in, they're talking about the competencies, they're talking about, how they got to where they are, what they're most proud of, and all of the work that has led to their growth throughout the 4 years. And then the questions are there so that if students might struggle to have that conversation, or it's to help guide panelists too in asking some questions of the students. So those discussions, they're not presentations, those discussions are happening this Wednesday morning and then Thursday and Friday afternoons. And we're super excited. We're so impressed with the work that our seniors have done so far. So it'll be really great to see it in person. Something to celebrate.
Thank you, Megan. I think it would be great if, as we go through this, that we could also share perhaps next month some of the successes of it, because I know that I so enjoyed when we started this. It was actually one of the results of COVID, where kids, they all couldn't go on internship, and so some chose to do this. And the conversations and the work that was shown were really amazing.
Yeah, we've talked about looking at some of our exemplars. It'll be nice to have exemplars for next year too, in terms of the online portfolio, but bringing those back to the board so we can do some bragging too, and some of the work that our students have done. It's exciting.
I actually wanted to say thank you. I was invited to participate as one of the community members to hear these or be a part of these discussions with the students, and I'm really looking forward to it. Just because this whole, portrait of a graduate to me has been fascinating all along, and now I'm excited to actually see it live and see the kids and what they've got to share, and I'm super excited about it. So thanks for including us in that.
Thanks for coming. We're really excited about the number of community members that are a part of our panels. It's really great to share, because we sometimes know what goes on in the school from day to day, but it's really nice to have the community members come in and see all of the things that these kids are so proud of.
Questions or comments from anyone else?
Megan, I just had one question. I was wondering, when you were giving this presentation about the advisory teachers, and I hadn't realized that this was a program that was really so robust, 10th, 11th, going into 12th grade as well. Does that mean that the kids have the same advisory teacher for all those years?
All 4 years.
Oh, they do? Oh,
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, advisory is really intended to be that touchstone for kids. So as they come in as freshmen, they develop that relationship with that advisory teacher. We also, as you know, we're starting Link Crew next year. So not only will they have the teacher, but they'll have those upperclassmen Link Crew leaders, and then that teacher travels with them. So they really, over the 4 years, really get a sense of who they are. They get to know them, and they're a really dependable resource for kids too, which goes hand in hand with helping them define their portfolio and really tell their story throughout those 4 years, and culminating with that online website.
And how many teachers, how many students to a mentor?
Ideally 10 to 12. Sometimes there are some that are larger, but we're really evaluating those numbers for next year, recognizing the work that goes into supporting students through not their portfolio work and other initiatives that advisory works towards.
It's great. I mean, the teacher should be lauded for taking on this incremental responsibility.
I just wanted to say about the program from a learning perspective, it's amazing how it gets the students to build that knowledge as step one, reflect on everything they've built to pick which pieces hit those marks. And the third part is what we don't do as much or have enough opportunity to, just communicate that to others, which is such an important part of the learning process. So to be able to have those discussions with community members, great for the community, but also fabulous for the students. So I think this is tremendous.
Yeah, everyone at Weston High School that worked on this was really so thoughtful about that, the metacognitive piece of reflection, but also understanding that these are, adults in the making, and really to help them hone those communication skills and conversational skills. And, it's okay to speak positively about yourself, right? So as you prepare to maybe interview for future internships or jobs and all of that, this is really good practice.
Is there a compendium? Do you distill this down in proceedings or something that because you have 180 roughly, I'm guessing, right? Is there a little summary for each one that's collected? Maybe they could be sorted by topic.
So we're going to look at what we get, and then we're going to see how we want to kind of display those exemplars. And look at how we're organizing it going forward. But
Right.
it would be really cool when you look at the
Yeah,
different
I mean, you
topics
can
and
see
the
the
different,
utility of that, right? I mean,
yeah, the different
you sort
areas
by
that
topic
kids
and
might
you
have
pick
focused
one.
on too.
Excellent.
And
Are there-
Steve, to your point, in terms of the kind of curriculum of Portrait of the Graduate, we really, without Julie's work and Vanessa Eisman's work, this would not be happening. So the advisory teachers really depend on that curriculum, which really walks them through the process, which is amazing. So they deserve a ton of credit on this.
Yeah, and just the fact they have the same teacher, mentor for 4 years, I mean, that just gives, the whole program that much more gravitas, and it's really interesting.
And, I'm really proud of the fact that we have this experience for our seniors. And then in the spring, senior internship. I mean, talk about real life situations they are learning to, handle and approach. It's just great preparation for life after Western.
Well, great. Thank you. It's really exciting. I'm looking forward to being there on Thursday.
We are too. Thanks for being there.
No, thanks, Megan. Anyone else have a comment? Do we want to go to the next item agenda?
Please.
Okay, Lisa, all you.
So we have an update on pupil personnel services and special education. Ms. Edwards, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. As Lisa shared in the consent agenda, we are absolutely thrilled to have Amy Spicer joining as our Assistant Director of PPS for grades 4 through 8. She's coming to us on April 17th, and a detailed communication went out to families and staff today. Just a couple of highlights. Amy met with a variety of people as part of the interview process, and we were all extremely impressed by her many talents that she brings to this unique position. We are doing a lot of planning already around the transition. As Lisa mentioned in the consent agenda, this is a newly formed position. So we have transitions that we'll be working through both at the intermediate school and at the middle school. And I'm extremely fortunate that both Patty Morrow, who will be shifting to that preschool to grade 3 position, and Patty Roscoe, our interim assistant director for the middle school and high school, will be helping to facilitate that transition for students, families, and staff over the last couple of months of the school year. Shifting gears a little bit, we announced in a previous Board of Education meeting that Vicki DeLuca, our school counselor at WIS, is retiring at the end of the school year. Vicki, of course, is an amazing asset to our district, and we will miss her. In thinking about filling that position, we are going to make the same transition at the intermediate school that we made at Hurlbut, which means that rather than posting for a school counselor position for WIS, we're going to be posting for a school social worker position for WIS. That doesn't change anything about the budget other than the title of that particular role. The reason for doing that is a social worker, unlike a school counselor, has some different training in the areas of mental health and also in working with family systems. We found that to be a huge benefit to us at HES and look forward to making the same transition at WIS. And then finally, the next parent meeting is rapidly approaching. It's next Tuesday, March 21st at 4 o'clock in the Weston Middle School Library. And the focus of that presentation is reading an IEP in CT SEDS, which is our new IEP system. It has been a steep learning curve, to say the least, on a variety of fronts. And we've had some feedback from families that while the overall content of the document is the same, the new format has been a bit confusing. So we'll be going through that step by step and using it as an opportunity to talk about each of the components of the IEP. And that's my update.
Great, thank you. Are there questions for Tracy? Terrific. Do we want to go on to the next item, Lisa?
Yes, we have some policies. So this is a first read for the policy. We met, the policy subcommittee met under the direction of Vice Chair Ms. Walker, and we touched on several policies. This first read we have for field trips and community service. Then we have another one to discuss about grants, gifts, and bequests. I would ask Dr. Henkel, who really spearheaded these efforts, to take us through the field trip policy, please. Tina.
Great. Good evening, everyone. As Lisa mentioned, the last time this field trip policy was updated was in 2004. And so we merged some of the language from Shipman and Goodwin's model policy, but also merged some language relative to the policy that was already in existence that Weston had. We cleaned up some of the language so that we defined the 3 different types of field trips that we are approving in district. Those include day field trips, overnight field trips, and international field trips. We also wanted to ensure that we were very clear in recognizing that field trips are expected to be directly aligned to the curriculum and seen as extensions of educational opportunities for students and enhancing the curriculum. We also wanted to ensure that the policy was explicitly calling out that the teachers are and the buildings and schools are expected to follow the internal administrative regulations that would fulfill the policy as outlined above. And so we did a good amount of work around our administrative regulations with this go around. We have a clear step-by-step procedure for approval and organization of day field trips, as well as international and overnight field trips, just to ensure that all of our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, and that all departments are clearly communicated with, and that includes transportation as well as human resources if there are any needs with substitute coverage. And also making sure that transportation and any financing that is needed for field trips are also communicated with. So you'll see within the next couple pages of the administrative regs, the outline for not only day field trips, but also overnight and international field trips as well.
Questions, comments?
I just wanted to say that Dr. Henkel is far too modest to say this herself, but she really thoroughly vetted this policy, and especially with the regulations, took into account, what was happening here in Weston, what was working, what wasn't working, and really developed a very thoughtful step-by-step process for, how to approve and initiate field trips. So, I thank her for her thorough work on this. And, as with any administrative regulation, the first time around, we'll learn and can adapt and modify if we need to make changes down the road. But this is definitely a first step for clear communication and great and exciting opportunities for the students.
Lisa, the next.
Thank you. The next is gifts, grants, and bequests to the district. And I'm going to take us through that one. So this policy hasn't been revised in 16 years. And so we thought it was time that we looked at it. Again, remember, we have this bank of policies that we get from Shipman and Goodman and our sister districts, if you will. Also use them, and so the policies are kind of aligned with what's going on around us, I would say. So the purpose of this policy is to be very clear about the acceptance of gifts, and those gifts can be a monetary contribution as well as physical objects, and how they are received from. We are so fortunate that the town is generous. We get gifts from the PTO, we get gifts from boosters, Kiwanis, Weston Gun Club, so many different contributors. And I think one of the things that we have to just be careful is that there does have to be close oversight on these gifts, as well as receiving them appropriately, making sure that they are appropriate to the mission and the vision of the school district, that they don't incur an additional operational cost. Those things have to be taken into consideration. And so this policy kind of clears all that up and talks specifically about how to accept the gifts. What I think is most helpful are the regulations. And in the regulations, and it's touched upon in the policy, it talks specifically about amounts that are given. And now we're seeing significant amounts that are being donated. So, for example, you can have, it says gifts valued $4.99 and under do not require formal action by the Board of Ed, and which is great because this is a procedure that can also delay the purchase. I'm thinking of yoga mats that the PTO bought for the mindfulness Take 10 activity at the high school. We certainly don't want to have to wait a month to 2 months to get it formally approved when, it was several $100s. So that kind of speaks to that level of gift. Then you go from 500 to 2,000, and there it's an approval of the superintendent and acceptance by the board. It's when gifts are over 2,000 that the board really needs to approve the purchase before accepting it. The other important thing in this reg is that when something is purchased, it has to, when required, include the bidding process. And I know that this is especially important with our fiduciary responsibility to the town. We don't want someone purchasing something or an outside group getting the item. And then I think most commonly I'm thinking of in Dan DeVito's area. Does this interface with what we have? It needs to be appropriately vetted. It might have to go out to bid, and Phil Cross's Director of Finance handles all of that. So it specifies all of those, which again, I think are very important. The policy touches a little bit about fundraising, and it talks about fundraising efforts and establishing school activity funds. We have school activity funds, and I will tell you that we will be moving forward with the fundraising policy, which is a separate policy later in the spring. It needs to be discussed again at the subcommittee, policy subcommittee next month. Any questions on this current gifts, grants, and requests to the district?
I have a quick clarification question. So if somebody, let's say, Chad, because he always talks about different kinds of seating, if Chad wants to donate 2 or 3 chairs to a classroom, are the 2 or 3 chairs each have to? Is it a group that has a value of $500, or if he decides to donate 3 chairs at a value of $250 each, he's okay?
I wouldn't say he's okay. I think that it can be a person. We've had persons give a gift, and also groups. But when we talk about, minor gifts that impact curriculum, new programs, things like that, produce inequity among the schools, it has to be approved by the superintendent. So if someone wants to do something for her child's classroom, while as generous as that is, for example, let's say 4th grade, we have 7 sections of 4th grade, that results in an inequity in that grade level. And that's sort of where the guardrails are being put up also to consider that. It might be a great idea. However, it shouldn't be, it has to be sort of access to all. So what would happen in that place would be Ms. Cadis would work through that with me about how we do it. And there also could be a gift that someone wants to give. I've had it happen in the past where somebody wants to give the high school something, and it sounds like a great gift, and we don't want to seem ungrateful, but when it can affect the operations of the district moving forward, there have been times where we've said, thank you very much, but we are not going to necessarily accept it. One of the things that comes to mind are pianos. People often want to donate pianos, which are great. We're kind of at our piano limit now, and they have to be tuned and everything. We have plenty of pianos. The community's been so generous, but that might be something where we say, thank you, we have enough.
Any other questions or comments? Phil? Finance and operations update.
Hello, everyone. So we have some changes month over month. I just want to go over those real quick. So we do have for the year, we do anticipate that we will be slightly over in our combined section for substitute to the tune of approximately $170,000. And that is primarily due to unfilled positions and the various leaves that we have district-wide. In addition to that, we do have some turnover savings to the tune of $215,000. Largely contributing to this is a reduction in the anticipated expenditures for our assistant directors of PPS, and also an unfilled position that academic assistants at the high school that is currently being filled internally. The significant adjustments that we have this month are two parts in benefits. First part has to do with the early retirement incentive plan and with our OPEB. During discussion for fiscal 23, the Board of Finance did approve establishment of a non-lapsing account for $140,000, which would fund the final payment for ERIP. And also there will be a contribution from a town OPEB trust fund to fund retirees' insurance premium for $320,000. So I'm recommending that we use our current year's surplus to fund those two expenditures. Of course, this will need to be discussed and obtain final approval from the Board of Finance. Property services, $114,000. I think we did discuss that we have engaged with the Beta Group to do an analysis of all the paving services district-wide. We will be also kind of tied into budget for 24. We're shifting the EV charging station from fiscal 24 from the capital budget, and we'll be purchasing the EV station from our current year surplus. Also in the budget as a TBD is the replacement of LED lighting in both the D and E wing. That was a TBD. We have a placeholder of $65,000. We're hoping that this will cover both the consultant to do an energy efficient audit and also for the replacement costs of all the LED fixtures and also for the labor to install these fixtures. This will be offset by a reduction in anticipated expenditure from our repairs allowance account for $60,000. So all in, we have a month over month reduction of $469,258, which will bring the anticipated surplus to $43,992. As it relates to the internal services fund, dental claims are trending within the expected range. And that is it for the update.
Sorry, I just started numbers down. Are there questions or comments on this?
I have a question, Phil. The LED lighting in the D and E wing, I think that's fantastic. Obviously, there should be some substantial cost savings once we switch over to LED. But you had mentioned something about we've hired someone. Explain to me what the process is, why we've hired an outside consultant for something to do with this. And then also you said that there's extra cost associated with the actual installation. That doesn't fall under regular janitorial or regular kind of not janitorial, but maintenance of the building. That doesn't fall within their realm of expertise.
So two things or a few things. So this is a replacement. So we currently do have LED in both the D and E wing. What's happening right now is that those fixtures are pretty much at the end of their life. So we're pretty much doing a replacement of all those. And this was done a few years back when there was some renovations to both the D and the E wing.
So not just this is actually the fixture that we're replacing then.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
They're currently
that makes a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as in terms of the additional costs, so if we were doing a single replacement or a minor replacement, we would typically use our electrician and pretty much everyone that we have to do this replacement, similar to what we did in the North House at Hurlbut this past summer, where I think we did change, we upgraded those light fixtures, I think in 3 classrooms. So because of the scale of this project, we do believe that we cannot, in addition to the regular summer projects that we have, we cannot do this in-house.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, since you seem to be well versed in this, what's the average lifespan for the LED fixture?
If I remember correctly, we're probably looking at 10 years plus.
Okay. Okay.
I have
Thanks.
a couple of questions. Working backwards off of Sharon's question. So what is this $65,000 for?
Two parts. So the 65,000 is for the replacement one. We don't have a hard number as to what the all-in cost would be. So I think 65,000 is pretty much, we feel comfortably enough to use 65,000 as a placeholder to do this. In addition to that, what we're hoping to do is that as we expand the project, we're hoping to hire a consultant that will kind of guide our work in terms of what we need to do in terms of the various replacements. Because once you go with LED lighting, what you'll find is that it's, in most instances, you cannot go a one-for-one replacement, because if you do a one-for-one replacement, the lighting is going to be too bright. So we do need some guidance, someone to guide us to say, hey, when you replace this, you may need to do a 2-for-1, and this will give you the adequate lighting, adequate replacement for the LED.
Okay.
Now, of course, we do not know how much it will cost us for the consultant. We'd of course need to reach out to several different vendors to kind of guide us, so we'll have an idea as to what the ultimate cost is. And again, so this $65,000 that we have today is not a hard number. In the coming months, we will firm up these numbers, and then once we do, we'll report back.
But the district, you said, has an electrician.
We do have an electrician.
So why are we hiring a consultant to tell us if we need 1-for-2 or 2-for-1? Why? I understand from a labor perspective, the project might be too big for our in-house electrician to take on, but why does our in-house electrician not have the expertise?
He does not. He does not have the expertise to tell us what we need to, and to correctly place these fixtures. Sometimes what you may have to find, and again, so if we were doing a single classroom or a few classrooms similar to what we did at Hobart, it's fine for us to do that. But we're not necessarily just looking, and again, this is not only for the D and the E wing. We're looking district-wide for all the projects that we may have to do district-wide, and not solely for the D and E wing. The D and E wing is easy because those will be a 1-for-1 replacement.
All right. I'll put this in the back of my mind for when it does come up for budgeting, because I think if our electrician doesn't have the knowledge and we can invest in that person so they gain the knowledge and they stay in the district and we can use them in multiple buildings, it seems to me like it's a win-win investment. We have that electrician get up to speed on how to do these types of analysis, and then we can ask the electrician to utilize that expertise throughout the district. So all right, my next related question, it's the use of consultants. It's kind of the theme. Why are we, although it's not much money, why are we spending $26,000 to tell us that there are areas that the pavement is probably beyond its useful life? It doesn't seem to me like that's an overly skilled, I could do it, and I have no knowledge of paving. So why are we spending money that we could just put towards paving?
So last year, and you're partly right that you can probably just look at the surface and say it's in need of repair. Last year, when we brought up both the middle school and the high school, I think a lot of questions were raised by the board in terms of how do we know what the current condition of all the pavement is. In addition to that, how do we know after replacement what the correct R&M is to ensure that we do maintain and extend the life of the said surfaces. So we could not answer those questions in-house. And again, this was the questions were raised both at the BOE level and also at the Board of Finance, at the level of the Board of Finance. So because of that, and to ensure that a district has the correct information to correctly guide not only current year's expenditure, but future year's expenditures, we decided to reach out to the Beta Group. And I should also want to point out that the Beta Group is the company that's been working with the town over the past couple of years in terms of doing the assessment for all the pavement townwide.
Okay, I understand for the town, which is a lot more paving, but I live on a private road where we have an association. We did a repaving project just started 2 years ago, which will be phased in. It did not require anybody with a significant amount of expertise to determine what areas needed to be repaved and the right way to do it. I think I remember a previous conversation, Phil, where you said it was determined, I believe it was called milling, was the best and preferred way to pave. And if we're not going to, I think it was discussed at the time, if we're not going to mill, we shouldn't be doing it. So my 26,000 is not a lot, but I just see over and over potential use of consultants where we should just put the money towards fixing the problem, not put the money towards having someone tell us we have a problem.
Yeah, and again, it's not to tell us that we do have a problem, right? We do know that all of our services district-wide, they do some level of resurfacing. It's really just a guided decision in terms of how do we outlay these funds and how do we prioritize the various parking lots and parking and surface area that we have district-wide. And it's really just an aid. And again, so last year when we presented it, especially for the middle school, the Board of Finance wanted more information. They wanted a better assessment as to what the current conditions were. And based on those conversations, we went out to the beta group.
And do we have, I think I remember also listening to the town, there's some life cycle that these reports have. And I think I remember the town shelved some of the projects. And then by the time they decided to look at doing it all over again, time they had the money to do the paving, some of the data was no longer useful. So is there a timeline that if the beta group does this assessment that we're going to use the information that they have? If they say, this area needs to be repaved in the next 24 months and this area in 36 months, are we going to have the money to do it?
Well, so the current plan, Dave, is the first plan based on is that we'll be doing the high school. And I think we've mentioned that if it comes back that the high school should not be the area that we should prioritize based on year one, we will reprioritize that. Do we plan on using their guidance for for future years capital budgeting? Absolutely. Now, ultimately, that decision in terms of how it's funded is not done at the Board of Education side, but that ultimate decision is made by the Board of Finance.
Okay.
Okay, Phil, you're going to hate me. I have one more question. This has to do with the EV charging station. Do we know, or okay, I'm sure you know, you know everything. How? What's the platform for the EV charging station going to be? Is it going to be free? Is it going to be? Are we going to be utilizing a company that charges and we get a percentage? How is the EV charging station going to work?
Sure. So it could be done both ways. I think the initial thought is that it will be free for staff and for students. The platform has the ability where after certain hours that there'll be a charge associated with that. In addition to that, each person who will be using the platform will be given a key, so to speak, or a code, and they'll pretty much be entering that code to gain access to those chargers.
So it's not going to be free for town use.
Currently, we haven't started discussion, but I'm saying no. So because we could be getting some revenue. So this is, I think, town and district wide, this probably will be the second charging station that we have. The town has one, and I do believe that the town does charge. I'm not 100% certain on that. But again, this is our first time doing this, right? And I think the more we get involved in this process, we'll get a better understanding as to what the usage will be and as to whether or not we should just be providing this as a service to the town. But this discussion is to be continued, and once we get more information, then we'll move forward with that.
Okay, no, I think that's a good idea. Talk to the town and find out what they're finding. If there are people if there are people in the community who are using it frequently, or if it's just mainly the employees wherever they have the charging station. So, all right, thanks.
And I guess the good news in terms of the EV charging station is that we. Titan Electric, the company who we're using for this project, they have submitted an application to Eversource, And Eversource has pretty much approved that application to provide the funding, partial funding, for those charging stations, or for the charging station.
Oh, that's great. Okay, thanks.
Right, so Phil, can you explain? So we're paying partially some amount to put the EV charging station in. And then where the question is, people can use, students or educated teachers, someone can use the EV charging station at no cost to them?
It all depends on what the setup is. So the initial thing is that if you're going to be using, the way we'll set it up initially, the initial plan is that we'll give staff and students access to the charger. Let's say after school hours, let's say at the high school, which will be located after school, we'll pretty much shut down that free portion of it, and it will be a paid service. But we haven't made a final decision in terms of what we will do. So we'll continue to have those discussions, David.
So who pays? So nothing's free, obviously we know that. Who pays? Who pays for the
electric bill?
Yeah.
We will.
Okay. So essentially we're going to subsidize people who opt to purchase an EV car, and we're going to subsidize it by putting one EV charger in a parking lot for how many cars?
Well, that's to be determined. Another way to look at that, Dave, is not so much that we're supplementing for these individuals who do have this, right? I think the way we should be looking at this is that this EV station is really just a part of our broader green initiative that we have, district and part of the district and the town. So it's not so much that we're doing it to supplement these people, because most people who do have, and I'm assuming that if they do have an electric car, that they do have some other means of charging the vehicles. In addition to that, in addition to that, there's also the time, in fact, in terms of how long it will take any vehicle to be charged. So we're just starting, Dave, and there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of things that we do need to sort out. And as we get further along in the process, we'll have those discussions, and we'll come up ultimately in terms of what is the ultimate plan, so to speak, in terms of for the state for this. And yes, we probably will end up that at some point that we're supplementing some portion of this. But again, it's not just the station. It is what is our green initiative district-wide, and then what are all the various components that ties into our green initiative.
Okay, I just think I'm not against a green initiative. I think there are other places that we can put the money. I just don't think that we should be supplementing EV charging locations when it's not a need. If people are, as you said, people who buy EV cars most definitely have some ability to charge in their home. And so I think that when we look at sustainability and green initiatives, putting in something that's not needed, we could use that money for another initiative. That's just my feedback.
So Dave, just and I think there's a quick comment. We did have a quick conversation with it. I think since this station has been installed at the town, there has been usage. I'm not quite sure what the level of usage has been, but there has been some usage.
Well, Phil, maybe just following on David's comments is, and I'm sure there's statistics, what does it cost? Oh, forget the capital cost, but what does it cost? We know what that is. What does it cost to run an electric charger per hour? And we can just, and just as I'm not asking you to answer that, even though Sharon says you have the answers to every question, but it would be helpful to know that.
Yeah, we do all have all of that data. We'll put something together again, as I mentioned, right? As we get further along within the process, we'll gather all the data and we'll definitely present it. And David, just so you know, this item is or was one of those items that was a part of our capital request for next year. So that was already a part of the capital request. The only change that we have currently is that we're shifting it from the capital budget from fiscal 24 to be paid from our operating budget.
Yeah,
Go ahead, David. Sorry.
I was gonna say two things. I knew about that. I did not know at the time, either I didn't hear it or it wasn't discussed, that the electricity to charge the vehicles would be paid for by the town or the Board of Education. And just anecdotally, just for the, just to close out the comment about people using the charging station at Town Hall. I have a friend who has an EV. He is very capable of paying the electric bill, but he chooses to drive his car to the train station and charge it there at no cost and walk home. So I think the point being is, what, I'm not sure how to phrase it, but essentially he has the means by which to charge. He chooses to use a subsidized route. So when you do an analysis of how much the town hall one might be, lost power here.
Well, hey, I don't know how to tell you this, Dave. I'm sitting in my electric car right now and I still have power. So there we go.
Lights will be back on in a moment. The generator just turned on. But hey, Dan, my disaster recovery works, right? Other than the lights, the tech part of everything works. See that? Generator. Anyway, very apropos to talk about EV while the lights go out. Anyway, my point being is that we should do an analysis, but just know, Phil, did we lose Phil? Where's Phil?
It's right there.
Oh, there you are. You moved spots on my screen. But when we do the analysis, just know, I think when something's given away at no cost, usage is different than if you're charging for the service.
And can I make a comment here? The one thing I was going to say is that as a parent who does drive an electric car and who goes to sporting events at different schools throughout the state, it's really nice to know, because there's gas stations in every town, but there's not necessarily electric chargers in every town. So it's really nice to be able to go to a school and know that they have an electric charger. And I think it's a really nice service that we can offer. And what you're saying, Dave, is absolutely right. There are people who, for lack of better words, will basically freeload power as an electric car user. I've seen people do it, and there are guardrails that we can put in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Time limits and perhaps charging, etc. So there are things that we can work on as far as the. That's one of the reasons why I was asking Phil what the platform was, what we were planning on using, etc. But I think it's a great thing for us to have at the school. I think it shows a green initiative. It shows that we are forward thinking as far as thinking about the environment, and it for the kids especially. And if we can provide it for the kids, not a lot of the kids are have electric cars right now, but kids and staff, and figure out some way to make it work for people who have to stop and charge as they come to see their kids at various sports, etc. I think it's a nice service to have. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Other questions for Phil? Can I have a motion to approve the Finance and Operations report?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the February 2023 financial update as presented.
Second.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Old business? Lisa?
Yes, we are going to discuss and vote on policy 5136, use of privately owned technology devices by students. This is, I believe, a second read. Dan DeVito, I don't know if you want to just summarize a couple quick highlights.
Sure. So this is just a quick update to an existing policy that we had that had been updated in 2020, that it just specifically lists Apple Watches and other wearable technology, even though the initial policy includes that as part of all others not named. We just wanted to explicitly name it because wearable tech is becoming more and more of a discussion point with teachers, with more and more students having smartwatches on a daily basis.
And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the policy also allows for the continual use and access to remote learning if necessary, if we need to go down that route.
Correct. Yep, absolutely.
Are there other questions or comments for Dan or Lisa?
I have something quick. I'm extra salty today, it would appear. I'm not intending to be salty today, but I recognize I'm coming across that way. I missed, unfortunately, I think the first read meeting, but I did share some comments I had about this policy with Lisa. So I think it was Lisa. Definitely Melissa. But anyway, I just wanted to say what I shared with somebody else. I don't recall who it was. I think the policy is too broad. There's a lot of sensitive data on people's personal mobile devices. And I think that the owner of the mobile device has a reason to believe that the information on it will be kept private. So when I look at the policy, specifically under the search of privately owned technological devices, I think it's too broad. I mentioned this again to somebody, I don't recall who. I compare it to a search warrant. And to obtain a search warrant, you have to have reasonable belief that data exists on it, and you have to go and have it approved by an officer of a court. So I'm not suggesting we do any of that, but I did suggest to somebody who I had this conversation with that before a device is taken from a student and searched, there should be some written reason that is then either given to the administrator or the superintendent that would say what it is that the device is being searched for and why the person has probable cause to think that this information exists on the device.
I think that you did share some of that with me. It's you're refreshing my recollection a little bit. I think it was a kind of a continuation of the discussion that had to do with also suspension, things like that. And right is talking about rights. And so I guess I would say, and any other administrator, feel free to jump in. I hear what you're saying. I think that, you know, in some of this, again, the idea of, and it kind of goes along with the other answer that we, are in locus parentis here. We don't need to get search warrants to look in a kid's bag if we suspect a child has drugs or a weapon. And that's the reason that we wouldn't here also put something in writing, send it to the parent and search. And I think that some of this also is, you know, it's an accountability and a responsibility on us as the administrators. And I can confidently say that, you know, when you are doing it in practice, and we do review, and we did review this particular policy with the administrative team, it's not give me that phone, I'm going to search through every single thing and look at it. Oftentimes, quite frankly, I'm thinking of recent things where you say, we understand you have these pictures. Do you? Can we see them? And quite often the child, the student will open it up and show them. Many times people give us things. We certainly don't go and seek these out and say, look at this. You need to do something. And the other thing that we also have to remember here is that we are mandated reporters with DCF. So if there's something really concerning on a child's phone or something like that, we have to do something about that. I'm thinking of, you know, I've been here a long time. So I have examples ranging from, to be blunt, drug deals to scary things where we thought that children were in danger. So I really appreciate where you're coming from, Dave. And I would respectfully say that sometimes it is very difficult to do that upfront, especially when issues of student safety, quite frankly, are in jeopardy, or if we know something, we see something, and we have to report it. As I said, we're mandated reporters. I don't think, I mean, I would be the first one if I found out, quite frankly, that someone took a cell phone and just started randomly going through it and looking at that of a child's. I would not be happy with that at all. And that person would have to answer that. There has to be a reason or a purpose, just as in a search. We can't just go randomly out and start searching cars. We have to have our bags. There has to be a purpose behind it. So.
Yeah, I think just to continue with what Lisa's saying, I mean, I do think I remember, I don't know if we talked about it, David, or if you had sent me some comments on this, but you know, I don't I don't read this as overly broad. When you get to the section on the search of privately owned technological devices, I mean, it says that the search may only happen if there are reasonable grounds, right? And then it also says that any search must be reasonably related to the objectives of the search and not excessively intrusive in light of the age and sex of the student and the nature of the infraction. So to me, you know, you're talking about a search that needs to be tailored to the specific issue at play, and you have a requirement of reasonable grounds. So I do think there are precautions built in, and I think I take Lisa's point about the need to respond quickly to certain situations, and the fact that the district is obligated to report to the authorities in certain situations. I don't think there in those situations that we would have the luxury of a delay. So I read this as being appropriately protective of students' rights.
And what my specific piece of it was that when a search is going to be conducted, the purpose of the search and what is being searched for would be documented. I don't see that as something that would create a large delay. I think it protects the district and it protects the student. I think the students should have some expectation of, you know, this is why it happened and this is the result of it. So my suggestion was that before a search is conducted, the parameters of the search, which would be the why and what information is expected to be found, is documented before. And I don't see a big delay. It protects, I think, the district as well, potentially from a situation where a search is seen as not, I don't know the wording that you just quoted. I didn't copy to my notepad here when I have my notes, but, you know, reasonable. I think it protects the district from us. If the search is documented, the why and what prior, it also protects the district. I look at it from both sides, from protection of the student and protection of the district. So I'm not opposed to the general policy. I just think that there should be something documented about what is being searched and why before the search happens for the benefit of the district and the student.
Jumping in here, when I look at the language, it does seem like on the face of it that it seems like we'll use that word, there's reasonable steps that could be taken on both sides. Superintendent Barbier, I completely acknowledge that makes sense that it needs to happen fast in these situations. If it's like a cyberbullying situation, for sure, speed is of the essence. And it also seems as though there could be additional language besides just the framing of reasonable grounds, because that's obviously open to whoever is implementing the search. I guess as I look at this, my reaction is that I think it's a very well-intentioned document that ultimately probably misses the mark a lot, because as anybody who's a parent knows, I'm sure this is like a drop in the bucket of the total amount of things that kids would be swapping or trading on their phones. And this is sort of like a stopgap to try to make sure we can prevent some of it. But the likelihood that this would really stop like the various thing in the exact moment, I think is probably a long shot. I think we need to try. I think it's smart we're trying, but it may be that there's a way to validate what David's bringing up and beef up the sort of documentation aspect or something in it. Point being, because if you know, who's to say how this could get implemented if it's a different administration? I think it's all good intentions in terms of how it actually gets carried out, but maybe there's a middle ground somewhere here in terms of what the actual language is, if you could put a couple things in place.
I would respectfully say to both of you that this pretty much is the document that Shipman and Goodman, who is the law firm that deals with most school districts, recommends across the state. So I would not recommend we alter it based on our feedback from our internal counsel.
And I think Lisa, correct me. I mean, if you're in a situation where there's a policy violation or an investigation, I mean, that is something that the administration is documenting, I would imagine, correct? As in the course of any type of policy violation or disciplinary action.
Yes. Right? Oh yeah. You mean if someone did not report something, someone did something that they shouldn't do? Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there,
I mean, I think there is, I guess what I'm getting at is I think there is reporting that's happening and documentation that's happening, regardless of whether it's stated in this policy, because it relates to the underlying issue at play, right? I mean, it's not the use of technology that governs whether there's a document that reports the disciplinary action related to students or student conduct. There's a report that relates to those violations or potential violations or investigations or any type of issue that presents itself with students. Those are all documented, whether it ends up being a occasion of guilt or an occasion of innocence. Those are documented.
correct. And letters are sent home to parents. Policies are cited when students violate them. Consequences are mentioned, the reason why, all of that is documented. You're absolutely correct. And I think that, this, as it relates to technology, yes, it relates to technology, but the root cause is it relates to bad behavior. It relates to inappropriate behavior, that whether they're using the technology or not, this specifically relates to the technology, but when there is inappropriate behavior, students are, there are consequences. Parents are involved, things are documented, letters are sent home, meetings are held when needed, all of that. You're exactly correct. And if someone does not follow a policy that works for this school district, including myself, that's a very serious area of concern. Policies are the laws that we live by in operating on the district. And if someone does something that he or she is not supposed to do, that person also has to be held accountable with a consequence.
Lisa, I'm thrilled that the school takes cyberbullying and the other ways in which technology can be leveraged badly so seriously. I mean, I won't take this conversation sideways because I know it would, but I would just submit to the administration long-term, if there are ways to even think about how we can get less devices in the hands of people doing things like this. Like, that's where this conversation ultimately has to go. I think I mentioned that in the previous meeting we had on this, but the question is, like, do they need smartwatches in the class and phones and things like that? Given that's where a lot of this will go in terms of the communication kids do to each other via these devices. But I know I'm opening a can of worms. I guess that's like over the next couple of years, maybe we as a body can consider how the kids use technology.
I also wanted to bring up, this policy is not just mobile phones and watches. The high school is a bring your own device school. And so the students' devices, the MacBooks, and the laptops that they bring in also fall under this policy. A few years back, the district made the decision for the high school to maintain a bring your own device policy, and K-8, we provide devices for those students. So I wanted to keep that in context, that this is beyond just mobile phones and smartwatches and stuff like that, but as well as actual laptops that the students bring into class.
And one thing I want to add is, and we do take very seriously how we work and partner with parents on this. So I'm going to do a shameless plug for an upcoming presentation webinar that Mr. DeVito, would you like to speak to that, please? Regarding technology for our listening audience.
Yeah, so the March 30th, we're going to be having myself and SRO officers Joe McGowan and Jason Kim are going to be having a Zoom meeting at 7 o'clock on March 30th called Families in the Digital Age. And we're just going to be discussing topics like this, social media, how to protect your children online, how to protect yourself online, all the new and crazy things that are out there. And just to make everybody aware of online presence, how that could negatively affect your children now and in the future for college applications, even looking for jobs. So this is hopefully the start of something we'll do, at least once a year, to just give a refresher and a reminder to parents on how they can better protect themselves and their kids. So March 30th, 7 p.m. The Zoom link will be coming out in the next few days.
That's great.
Are there other questions, comments? And this requires a vote?
Yes. Would you like a motion?
Yeah, I was just about, go ahead,
Okay.
Counselor.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve policy 5136, use of privately owned technology devices by students as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All those in favor, let's vote verbally.
Hi, Melissa.
I Sharon.
Hi, Bernadette.
Aye, Steve.
Hi, Chad.
Hi, Peter.
David, you're on mute.
I'm a no.
Okay. The vote on the use of privately owned 5136 use of privately owned technology devices by student passes by a 6-1 vote. Shall we move on to the K-1 reading update?
Yes, please. Last month, you may remember that Dr. Henkel led us through a presentation with the principals regarding the academic progress report on our goals mid-year. There was a piece that the testing hadn't finished regarding specifically K-1 reading, and as reading is certainly a district focus, we wanted to go back to that once the scores were finished at Hurlbut. And so take it away, Tina.
Great, thank you. As Lisa mentioned, this is just a finalization of our winter progress presentation relative to our district improvement plan and our district goals. When we presented last month, there was one goal in which we had not finished importing our data and finalizing our data because the assessment in the way that we collect the data is individualized and it's done by hand basically, and then imported into a spreadsheet. And then Dan and his group take that data and then import that into Tableau in order to create our visualization. So although this was collected during that winter timeframe, the actual import and analysis just was a couple days shy of our preparation for that last month's presentation. So we'd just like to finish that up this evening. So the presentation is actually going to be fully completed once this portion of the presentation is done. So tonight, Principal Cadis and I are going to finalize that K-1 progress towards our winter goals. So the first goal that we had was reviewing the kindergarten and first grade independent reading levels based on the Fontes and Pinnell assessment that we administer fall, winter, spring in Weston. This is a curriculum-based assessment that takes into consideration a variety of different components and provides an overall independent reading level. It also provides an instructional reading level, but when we look at progress towards our goals, we're looking at the students' ability to actually apply their reading application at an independent level. So just to give you some additional context to this assessment, every fall, winter, spring, let's pretend that in the fall, we expect students to be at an independent reading level 1. In the winter, we expect them to be at an independent reading level 2. And in the spring, we expect them to be an independent reading level 3, I'm making up those numbers. But when you think about the progression or the continuum of reading ability from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, students are gradually growing and getting stronger as independent readers. So in the winter, we expect that students are at the second level, right? So the assessment data that we're showing you today is the percentage of students that are at that middle point in the school year and their independent reading level. So when we report out that assessment, we actually look at 4 different levels. We look at students that are meeting that independent reading level, that are above that independent reading level, and then are below that independent reading level. So today we are providing you with the merged data for kindergarten and first grade. And we currently have 86% of our students that are at that middle point at their independent reading level. We're going to provide you with some additional data in the next 2 slides. On our goal for students when they get to the end of the school year, we expect that 90% of those students in kindergarten, first grade are at the end of grade level or end of year independent reading level. So it's a moving target, because like reading, we want them to increase their reading ability as the year goes on. And so for the purposes of the winter, we're looking at where they should be in the winter and the midpoint of the school year. We do, all of our teachers at this point, they do work with the SILs internally to provide support around individualized student plans and growth plans relative to this data. And so our SIL is working on a daily basis with our teachers to analyze the data more deeply and create individualized plans for students so that they can meet that end of year expectation and that end of year independent reading level. The second slide is based on the students with disabilities goal that we identified in our district improvement plan. It follows the same idea. Where do we expect our students to be at that middle of the year? We want our students to be reading at an independent level, let's say right in the middle, a level 2. And we have 47% of our students at this point that are reading at the independent level based on the mid-year benchmark. And then finally, I did create a visualization for each individual grade. So we broke it out a little bit further to analyze it a little deeper. The first column shows you the individual grade levels for all students. All kindergartners are at the 96% of our kindergartners are at that middle ground based on that independent reading level. And when we break out that subgroup with students with disabilities at the kindergarten level, we have 86% of the students with disabilities that are meeting that midpoint independent reading level. And then in first grade, you can see that 78% of all of our students are at that mid-year independent reading level, and students with disabilities at the within our subgroup are at 33% of our students are at the mid-year independent reading level. So we do have some work to do to meet our end of year goals. Our SILs and our teachers are working every opportunity they have to create customized plans for students and really dissect some of that instructional and independent reading data so that they can create customized plans and look at differentiated instruction and small group instruction as well, so they can respond accordingly. I'd like to add too that on March 20th, just to follow up on some professional development opportunities that we are offering throughout the district. Per request of the district professional development committee, we did have some requests for small group training, one-on-one small group, differentiated instruction, how to manage some of that within the classroom, looking at a variety of assessments and how to unpack those assessments and then translate those assessments into instructional plans for students at an individualized level. And we're also going to be providing the first of many opportunities for teachers to learn more about the science of reading and some of that transition as we move into next school year. As you may also know, this will be our last year using Fountas and Pinnell as a universal screener. The state of Connecticut requires all districts to be transitioning to a research evidence-based assessment tool. And so we will be adopting DIBELS 8 for the following school year. Laura, did you want to add anything else to some of the data and or responses to data with our teachers and our SIL?
I think you covered everything. We are, deep into conversations around next steps for students. We analyze these assessment points in tremendous detail. So it does give us a lot of information around decoding, fluency, and comprehension for students, and that really does help guide instruction. First grade has a tremendous amount of reading levels that students go through. In kindergarten, we're building those foundational skills and just beginning reading. And in first grade, the growth is tremendous. So we do often see at the end of the year, things really start to come together for students. They're a little better able to transfer the skills that they're acquiring across texts. And this does give us good information about how they're applying all of those skills into authentic books.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, Laura, I forgot to mention some of the support with students with disabilities and the specific intervention tools that we also use internally. Once we unpack that data, then when we create individualized support plans. We do match some of the needs of their reading skills to the interventions that we have in the district so that we can reconvene every 4 to 6 weeks to measure progress and decide whether or not we want to continue with some of those individual plans or make adjustments. So we have some work to do in certain areas. We recognize that, and we have some time before we recollect that data for the end of the school year as well. Those are the 3 slides. And that will complete the full package for our mid-year progress and our progress towards our goals. For
Dina, can you just, I just want to point out on, if you could go back to the slide with the students with disabilities, there's there's just a small typo on there that I just want to point out.
Okay.
For the public. So
this one? No, this one. This is the K
so
and
the
1
19,
student
the
with
19 and the 38 should be in the summary, 57% of students. 38 and 19 is 57.
For this one?
Yes.
The current? Oh. Well, that's good. That's a good error. Thank
Yes,
you.
it is.
Yeah, we just gained another 10 points. Way to go.
That's great. Oh, look at that. Thank you. Must have been a long day that day, clearly. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Could you, the 3rd slide, please?
This one, sir.
Is there, and tell me if, you know, if I'm reading this incorrectly. There seems to be a regression between students that have gone from kindergarten to 1st grade. And am I correct or incorrect here?
No, so that's just more a function of in kindergarten, there are fewer levels that students go through because the beginning of the year are the foundational skills, then they start applying it to reading. So in 1st grade, it's not atypical to see it takes some time during 1st grade for them to really put all those skills together. And in 1st grade, there's a tremendous amount of growth and reading levels that students move through. You know, growth, particularly with young children, isn't always linear. They don't always move
sequentially
and at equal parts throughout their growth. Sometimes, you know, they're kind of plugging along, they're acquiring the skills, and all of a sudden they move rapidly.
There's a piece of the developmental part of reading, just having 4 children that all struggled at the early ages. There's a maturity level when it comes to reading and a stamina and focus level as well. And sometimes as students get older, it sometimes clicks in the process. And just to give some context, as Laura mentioned, in kindergarten, there's 4 levels from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. And in grade 1, there's 6. So there's a lot more incremental steps and skills that students have to acquire to be at that independent reading level for grade 1.
And there's also at different levels, you know, as they move through the acquisition of reading skills, some of them are a little more, some of the skills are heavier at some stages than others. You know, they might go through rapidly through some, you know, the short vowel sounds, and they get to the long vowel sounds. Now, when you're coming into blends and things that are a little more complicated, sometimes they just need a little more time to really master those and apply them. And then all of a sudden they're off and running.
And just to quantify, these are independent reading levels. So if we expect a student to go to their book bin, get a book out of that bin and open it up and independently read fluently, with intonation and tone and comprehend what they're reading. It doesn't mean they're not able to read with support. It just means we have a really high standard for all of our students, even at the youngest ages, to ensure that they're reading independently. And that's the data that we're collecting. So, right, Laura?
Yes. Yes.
And
I think that the pie chart that's probably jumping out at you, Steve, is the one, you know, students with disabilities. In kindergarten and 1st grade, we're often identifying students for the very first time, learning, you know, understanding and evaluating their learning profiles, which gives us information So you don't always see, the instant growth, because sometimes this is where we're identifying the students typically.
But then when you do go to first grade and 56% are below the benchmark, how much incremental help is required there? On the part of the teachers and paraprofessionals in the classroom.
Mhm.
And if that number were to stay constant, should we not be providing even more help than what they're currently getting? Because there's just a limit to how much one individual adult can do.
I can weigh in on this if it would be helpful.
Sure.
Steve, I think that's a great question. As we've been discussing in this presentation, the number of levels that students are expected to navigate through in first grade specifically is very significant. At the same time, you're exactly right. First grade is where we want to be focusing a lot of our support and intervention, because it's a really critical period of time instructionally to be providing intervention and to be closing the gaps. So we're looking really closely at this data. We've done a lot of professional development, I would say in general around reading, and specifically with our special education teachers. There's no magic number of intervention minutes. There's no magic intervention. I think this is an important data point for us to be thinking about how we best structure the second half or the last few months of the school year to help as many students as possible get near that target.
Thanks, Tracy. That's really helpful. Others have questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. So this is kind of an involved question, I guess, both for you, Dr. Henkel, and you, Principal Kades, which is, from what I understand, part of the reason why other states and Connecticut have shifted away from the Fontes and Pinnell is that the assessments are not necessarily that accurate even. So the question is, like, in the future, as we're thinking about, I think I have the name right, the American Reading Company. The question to both of you is, do you think those assessments will be a better sort of snapshot or, analysis of how the kids are doing? Essentially, do you have more faith in those assessments?
So I'll start, Laura, and then you can add too. So this assessment was never intended to be a universal screener, right? This is a curriculum-based assessment. It really is to drive individualized lesson planning for teachers, small group instruction, helping students move through that developmental stages of reading. As we shift into next school year and we adopt an evidence-based screener that the state has required, it does provide us with oral reading fluency assessment. It does provide us with different components of reading, but it's more standardized and it's more normative, right? The data points and the comparison provides a lot of evidence behind and research around how the assessments are built and how the data is collected and how they're compared to different other students nationally at this point in time at that grade level. So it will be a shift, and we'll be able to gather that data more seamlessly because it will be collected and entered on a database. So it'll be a lot easier to kind of pull that snapshot. In addition to that, though, there are curriculum-based assessments in the new core resource, American Reading Company, that does provide instructional assessment to instructional data to respond to individuals' needs of students within the pillars of the science of reading and that developmental stages of reading and complexity of reading as students go from kindergarten all the way up to 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So we've seen the assessments. We are still vetting some of the curriculum-based ones and some of the interventions that are also part of the program in addition to the assessments that we currently have. We also want to be very clear that we have found a lot of success in the Foundations program that we have right now, as well as the Heggerty program that we have, which will be in addition to our Tier 1 and in addition to our core curriculum. And we are not we are not going to be moving away from those two tools. We're going to be integrating those with our core curriculum and resource. So we're confident that like the full package is coming into play and all the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. So we're eager to get that work going. But as I mentioned before, we're just going to maintain what we have for this school year, use it to the fullest capacity so that we can use it instructionally, and then we're going to work to shift towards a new assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. Is there any calibration between you're phasing one in, you're phasing one out, you're phasing one in? Is there some sort of calibration so we can track this and see so when we get new things in the fall, we could backtrack it to what happened this year?
It's always a difficult question because you're comparing apples to oranges. I think that when we look at reading levels and independent reading levels and the ability for students to apply those skills of reading, we'll be able to maybe look at some comparisons that way. But again, I'm not sure that that would be the best practice, given the fact that, they're completely different tools and resources, but we'll have to see what kind of data that is and how it's gathered and how easy it is to use some of those comparisons and within the visualizations. But I think it's a point well taken.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Henkel, I have a question about, so when we change next year to the new program from Hartford, being that I think I remember at the legislative breakfast that Lisa and Steve and I were at, our students by and large already exceed the minimum requirements by Hartford. So when a lot of our students do exceed, right? The minimum
when you say exceed by Hartford, are you meaning like when students complete the Smarter Balanced assessment, they score high? Is that what you mean by saying Hartford?
The state mandate. It's the state requirements, probably a better way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
So with the new program, are we still going to be looking for that high level of achievement across the board from all of our students?
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons why we leaned a lot towards American Reading Company is their variety of texts and text sets and the authenticity and the range of reading abilities and reading levels that it includes at all grade levels was something that we valued as a district literacy team so that we can respond to students that may be ready to have a higher level of text complexity in a text versus a student that may be on grade level or needs additional support. So and the reason also why we like those American Reading Company is because at each grade level, there's such a range of texts that we really feel it's gonna meet the needs of all the students in all the classes.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Other questions?
I just have a question.
Bernadette?
Yep. So we've been talking a lot, especially through the budget process, of introducing the SILs and the importance of that being a full-time program. So looking at this data, now we've identified a specific population that needs extra support. How can we leverage the SILs, or what would they do to help address this problem that we wouldn't have the ability to do without them?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for reinforcing that question. I did mention that the SILs right now across the district actually are probably leaders in itself regarding individual student growth plans and individualized instructions based on the data that is collected even as early as kindergarten. So in Laura's building, I've actually observed it and witnessed it. She can actually attest to it a little bit further, but the SIL is creating individualized growth plans and collaborating with the general ed classroom teachers and the special education classroom teachers as well to really unpack the data, understand what the data is telling us, and then making individualized plans to respond to the data. Like, how are we going to change our lesson plans in small group and in intervention so that students can show growth over a period of time based on an individual reading skill? And then once the student sees growth in that individual reading area, then we're going to switch and go to the next skill so that the when the student actually has to apply all those skills together when they're reading, they can actually start seeing some of those text complexities and the independent reading level increase. So they're already doing that with the amount of time that they're given with grade level partners during planning meetings. But again, they also provide interventions. So they're seeing some of the small group instruction with some of the reading interventions that we have. So next year, if this goes through, it'd be really great to have the SILs really be focusing on looking at classroom planning and unpacking that data and connecting it to the units on a 100% scale. Laura, I don't know if you wanted to add anything around some of what Andrea does in the building. She's definitely an asset.
Yes, and those have been ongoing. I've been in many of them as well, and we really do unpack the data. We look at it compared to all the other data we collect throughout the year, and then build specific plans for each child to ensure that that growth continues to happen. Part of what you also see in the winter is it's just the reality of what's happening this year. We have a lot of illness. So students who may have had, long-term absences, or, now that everybody's back in person and we're post-COVID, all those other illnesses are hitting the youngest students pretty hard. So students who may have missed units or some instruction, we're filling those gaps now. And that takes time as well. So, we've had, you name it, it's gone through the building. So
Just out of curiosity, Tina, a question for you. Again, time frame. If the budget gets approved, are we prepared for the SILs to hit the ground running, or have you earmarked candidates, et cetera, so that next year we can begin with the SILs in place and ready to roar?
Lisa, I don't know if you want to jump in here. We have already been in collaboration with the job description and with the WTA, and looking for final edits and revision so that we can post the job description and we can begin the interview process as soon as possible so that the team can be established. So that the expectation and goal is that the team is fully established based on the new job description, and also they are ready to start working on summer curriculum writing once the end of the school year begins, and we can even potentially have like a summer retreat in anticipation of next school year once the school year opens. That would be my hope and my goal.
All right, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Tina, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa, superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report. Well, there was an exciting administrative field trip today. They went to the Wilton Public Schools. I was so sad that I was not able to participate. Mr. Cross and Ms. Ward went to explore the wonderful world of composting in the Wilton Public Schools cafeterias. Megan, perhaps you could give a quick update on our future sustainability efforts. Very exciting.
It's very exciting. I think what we learned is we're super fortunate in Weston that we have our sustainable solutions class, and between Mike Aikenhead and Mr. George, who also advised the green team, Mr. Aikenhead teaches a sustainable solutions class. Our students really are pushing this initiative. They are behind it. They want to get started with composting and other sustainable solutions around the school. We started at an elementary school, and I think in all of the buildings I've been, and many of us have been in, elementary school students will follow directions. They'll look at the visuals, they'll sort. They had great visuals behind those composts, right, Phil? So we saw the kids, elementary kids, walking up to the compost bins, looking at the visuals and deciding, I'm going to put my food here, and I'm going to put my recyclable here, and I'm going to put my garbage here. It's very cute. Always a nice change for me to be in an elementary school. From there, we went to the high school, and it's a completely different perspective. The kids, they had the compost bins, the PVC ones that maybe we've seen pictures of here, some ideas of compost bins. And in speaking to folks at the high school, it was very clear that this was an adult initiative. And I think that the benefit that we're going to have in Weston is that we have students who are super passionate about this, who are leading the charge on composting. So what we're hoping is that we would pilot this in the last month of school. We're going to take some time. We're going to start a campaign. I'm going to talk to Mr. Aikenhead and his students and Mr. George as well, and the green team, and look at how we can promote this over the next couple of months. We'll get it on Trojan TV. And then for the last month, we'll have those compost bins set up at the high school. And I think it'll be nice that it kind of trickles down. So we'll build some momentum at the high school, see how it works. We know it's going to take some planning, but having the students kind of incentivize each other and having the students speaking up and really taking this seriously, I think will have a greater impact. So it was a fun afternoon.
Thank you, Megan. We're very excited to be moving forward with our green initiatives, and thanks, Phil, for arranging the visit.
If Lisa, I can
yeah,
put in a shameless plug for the high school green team and their effort to what they refer to as tree plenishment events, where you can buy saplings and you can plant them, or they have a group of volunteers that will come to your home and plant them. But that went out earlier this month, and if you haven't seen the email, I will certainly send it to everyone. But it looks like a fantastic opportunity.
That is a great idea.
Happy to blast it out, K-12. Jody, make a note. I want to thank Phil also for working with me as far as with safety, security, practicing drills, things like that. We had a meeting with the chief and Sergeant Michelli to talk about, part of our improvement plan was the idea of really making sure that we are prepared to do a reunification drills, moving from one school to the other. And one thing that we learned was that the chief and Sergeant Michelli highly recommended that we attend a training called I Love You Guys. At first I thought Sergeant Michelli was telling us he loved us, but it's called I Love You Guys training, and it's next week. And so Mr. Cross, myself, and Mr. Del Mastro will be spending 2 days doing it to really get a solid understanding of how to, I would say, take our school safety plan to the next level. We also are partnering with WestCon at WestCon. It's housed in WestCon. Dr. Bernhardt, who's the director of the Connecticut Center for School Safety and Crisis Preparation. Phil and I had a great conversation with him and his assistant, and it talks about, regionally, how we can help and work with each other. And it's not just for, school safety and crisis also encompasses mental health crises, things like that happen perhaps in a district, and how we support other districts. So more to follow. We are going to be building that partnership over the next few months. A lot of theater going on in the school district. We just had the WIS Showstoppers a year with Frog and Toad, which many people, I know you said you attended, Steve, that the kids were remarkable. You can go on the Instagram. I'm really trying to get over 1,700 followers, so get the word out for the public school Instagram. And of course, at the end of March, we have Once Upon a Mattress, one of my favorite shows for company musical. And that's beginning Thursday, the 23rd of March, and going through the weekend. So I would encourage anybody to go out and see these shows. And finally, I would like to give a shout out and an opportunity again for Dr. Henkel to talk a little bit about our professional development. March traditionally is Choice PD for the district, which takes a great deal of work and planning. And so what's going to be happening on March 20th, Tina?
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting day. Shout out to the Professional Development Committee with teachers and administrators who help coordinate and organize the day. This is an all hands-on event. We have a total of 45 sessions of offerings that we are offering to our staff that are fully Fully Choice. We use an online scheduling tool that Dan DeVito had experience with prior to my arrival, and it's actually a really phenomenal organizational tool. So we built that up, and that's where the teachers get to choose their sessions. In addition to the instructional sessions, we are also offering mindfulness and social emotional learning sessions throughout the day. We're even offering an option for purchasable lunch options during the day, and Andre is helping us with that. And yeah, it's just going to be a full day of learning and collaborating and really allowing time for teachers to choose a passion or interest, whether it be a professional interest to build some of their own internal capacity. And sometimes it could be just a personal growth interest as well. Something as simple as saying, I'm a parent of early age child's students who want to learn more about the science of reading, for example, and they get to go to a science of reading training. So we've got data analysis sessions. We've got one-on-one teaching sessions. We've even got Joe McGollum coming and doing the same kind of thing that Dan and him we're collaborating with throughout the day. All of those are maxed out. We have building thinking classrooms. Those are maxed out. We have DBT and social emotional learning. So it's going to be a really great day, and the teachers are excited, and I'm happy to help coordinate it.
Thanks, Tina. I mean, it took a great deal of collaboration with all of the building principals, as well as Tracy, SPED, PPS, Dan coordinating with the technology, a lot of moving parts here. So we're really very pleased with all that. And that's it for the superintendent's report. We did present last week to the Board of Finance. We will be continuing moving forward with the budget process. There's a public hearing for the Board of Finance, then they will vote, and then we'll go into April on the referendum. So stay tuned.
May I add one more piece? I'm sorry, 2 seconds. Just a reminder that we have our Tri-State Visiting Committee coming on March 29, 30, and 31st. There's been some communication to parents to engage in focus groups in that tri-state visit, where we're focusing on math, specifically in grades 5 through 12. Another shout out to our SILs, Carolyn Vinton and Janine Russo and Kelly Del Vecchio, who've been really helping coordinate the evidence for that visit, as well as the principals, Dan Doak and Megan Ward and Patty Falber, who've really been helping me coordinate that. This is my first time through having organizing a tri-state visit. It's going to be really exciting, and I can't wait to read the feedback and learn from our tri-state critical friends. So thank you.
And that's very important, because when people say, well, how are you going to leverage the SILs? What are you going to do in math next year? All of that. Tri-State helps guide us and answers our question. Can you repeat our question for the viewing public? To what extent?
So we're doing a consultancy visit. So there's 8 indicators in Tri-State that you can self-reflect on. We're choosing 2 of the performance indicators. That's on student metacognition and equitable support for student needs. And our 2 essential questions are: to what extent do our instructional strategies promote a student-centered approach to learning mathematics in grades 5 through 12? And the second essential question is: to what extent does our current math curriculum in grades 5 through 12 provide all students with an equal opportunity to access grade level content and maintain high expectations for all?
Thank you. So a lot going on in the next couple of weeks. I already feel exhausted just listening. So thank you. Thank you to the building administrative team and the central office administrative team, because it's a Herculean effort to get through this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for Lisa, Tina, and others? Shall we move on to the committee reports? The first is the Communications Committee.
Not too much to report on, other than a brand new website, mostly courtesy of Dan DeVito. So the district does now have a new website. Dan can talk briefly about that if you'd like for him to. That was the big deliverable from our group this month.
Yeah, our website went live a few weeks ago. The feedback so far has been great, very positive. There have been some things that we've made some modifications to make it even easier, some wording, some links that were not necessarily easy to get to. But overall, the feedback has been great. So I want to thank everybody who helped transition, everybody at the schools who's keeping everything going, as well as everybody who's contacted us to give us feedback on the previous website as well as the new website. So thank you again.
Terrific. Questions? Move on to the curriculum committee.
Okay, our last curriculum committee meeting was on February 14th, and two of the big agenda items were the state of Connecticut is currently in the process of updating the K-12 social studies standards. So we talked a little bit about what that would look like for our district. And we also spent a lot of time talking about the highlights of Weston's K-12 SEL program. So both of those things are in the February 14th meeting. And we have a meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock for anybody who wants to tune in.
Questions? Finance and operations, we met much like David's report. We've been spending a lot of time on the budget. We went through the numbers that all of us heard today, and from a facilities point of view, there really wasn't too much to report, with the exception of the track, where it appears we're going to replace the whole track. The current belief is it'll come well within the budget that we've already allocated capital for. Policy committee, Melissa?
Steve, I was going to allocate a few minutes for the EOC.
I'm sorry?
I was going to give an update on the EOC.
Yeah. Oh, you feel free. We'll jump in right now.
Right. So, I mean, if you want to really be exhausted well beyond professional development and tri-state visits, I have about an 8-week work with IDEO. Dave, please buckle up, they're a consultant. And we've produced a 50-slide series of proposals with a 7-minute video to explain them. The superintendent, the assistant superintendent, director of finance, and the chairman of the Board of Education has seen these. I can put them in the domain for the rest of the staff and the board to review, but I can share a couple slides which won't exhaust this. But now you'll get a reality check on the mission, objectives, timelines, budgets, scope of work, complex considerations and utilization of past work that this endeavor is going to involve, and well beyond the capabilities, I think, of our combined expertise. So I don't know how you want to handle this, Steve. It certainly goes well beyond building a building or closing a building. It's everything but that, maybe, but it's intense and it's really involved. I don't know if we want to dedicate more time or see it.
No, I think we should dedicate. I think we should dedicate more time and have a special meeting, and really spend some time on it with the board. And I meant to call you today, but something happened overnight in California that kind of.
I work with VCs of seed in Series A.
Yeah, and so
I've been at it all weekend, right?
Yeah,
I get it.
That took up my weekend. So so let me call you and we'll put together a special meeting on it.
Right, because all the materials there, the decision makers have seen it. We have to disseminate it amongst ourselves and to the public, but it's quite involved. And I don't want to shortchange it because IDEO put tremendous effort into it. Honestly, I put a lot of effort into it, and it's very strategic. It's very generational.
And very important.
Well beyond a slide for tonight's meeting, but it needs attention pretty immediately because we're on a 18-month timeline, and the work involved, even with a sort of phase 0 shallow well, has to happen now. And it will involve significant planning and involvement by the district and us.
No. I appreciate that. Luckily, the FDIC made my life a little bit easier today. So I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Well, I'm not bailing out of school district. I'm actually making it great. So it's a little different perspective. But yeah, I just didn't want to change the work that they did.
No.
Tremendous heavy lift to have it for us today, and you've seen it, or at least you have the ability to see it now. So what's the next steps? Would you like to call me?
Well, let me call you first thing in the morning, and we need to put together now, a whole agenda and timeline going forward.
Okay.
Because I think hopefully we're past the budget aspect of our lives, and now we're going to move on to the next phase.
Right. So that the messaging is to or the administration and the rest of the board members. This has not been neglected. It's actually a lot of hard work's gone to it, and I appreciate the chairman and I are going to talk about it. And it needs dedicated time. It's honestly, it's pretty complex.
Yeah, no, it looks great.
All right, thank you.
Can I just ask a basic question? When does the EOC meet, and who is on the EOC? Because I don't know where to consume this information that you've been talking about, Peter. Is it out there?
Dan set up a Google Drive so we can create control and then disseminate to the public, because the transparency is 100%. We just I have all the documents. We just haven't now disseminated it. And right now, I'm the chair, and the superintendent and the chairman of the Board of Education are sort of the drivers among their purviews. And we've only met once, and we have to meet pretty soon a second time as the book says, we don't want the flywheel to suffer from inertia. We want to keep it moving. So we owe the public and the students and the teachers and the parents a second meeting, and then we'll start diving into this pretty deeply.
Yes.
Does that partially answer your question, David?
Well, where do I go to consume this information so I'm prepared? Is it out there?
It is the work I have to date is not out there. It hasn't been disseminated to the full board. Maybe after Steve and I talk, or the superintendent and I talk.
Sure. If I can just add, and I agree, Peter, I like the reference to the flywheel. And I know that that there is a drive. I have not gone through all the materials that it was recently put together. Full disclosure, because I've been so involved with the budget and all of those pieces, so I haven't looked at it, but we need to have a meeting strategically and set up a schedule, as Steve said, to be able to share this information, review it, and everything else. So we will make sure that that happens in the next week or two.
Yep, that's great. Thanks. Melissa, the policy committee?
Yes, we met last week. We discussed this evening policy for second read and 2 for first read that we put forward. We're going to continue in our next meeting to work on our fundraising and advertising policies, which we've already started thinking about. We have a little bit more work to do on those. And then we're also going to bring forward a suicide prevention policy, which I think is an important policy for us to look at. We've heard community feedback on that issue and administrative feedback on that issue. So I think it's an appropriate policy for us to work on. And our next meeting is April 4th at 9 a.m.
The negotiations committee? Is that me? I'm not quite sure. Yeah. So we're negotiating with the ASME union right now. It's the last of the 3 unions. We've had 2 meetings. We have another one coming up this week. And we should have something to report back. What do you think, Melissa? 2 weeks?
I think by the 27th.
Yeah. CES, anything to report there?
Not really, just a reminder, because it took me a long time to figure out what CES is, Cooperative Educational Services, and just a group of other board members, principals, superintendents from other districts, pretty much in our DIRG, that get to talk about what's going on in our various districts, commiserate, share, learn. Good, fun. And we get breakfast once a year, as Steve and Lisa know.
Yeah, it was pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Got a nice notebook. The notebook was nice.
Yeah, it was. I gave mine to Tina.
Okay.
You liked it.
Do you want another one? Because they mailed.
No.
Maybe
Oh,
there's
Tina,
another bill
Tina.
in there. You never know.
There we
Okay.
go.
And you get
Kate?
cool notebooks.
I love notebooks. Yes, I will take it.
Okay.
Cabe?
Okay, CABE is the Connecticut Association of Board of Educations, and what's interesting about being part of the CABE organization and following what they put out is it gives you a little bit of a macro view of some of the bigger issues that are happening across the state of Connecticut. Two things that I've noticed have been in the newsletters quite a bit lately is, number one, Governor Lamont has put forth a new program with Commissioner Russell Tucker to address chronic absenteeism. It's a big issue across the state of Connecticut. The other thing that's getting a lot of traction and conversation is ChatGPT, which is the technology, and I don't think I can even explain it completely perfectly, but it's a machine learning algorithm that can access databases and spit out information that mimics human handwriting patterns. So it's like trying to have a conversation with an AI, but the AI is being as human as possible. And there's a lot of implications for better and for worse for education, but it's here to stay. So I think everybody's kind of talking about what role that's going to play in education going forward. And the last thing is this month is Board of Education Appreciation Month, right? So I want to just say thank you to Steve and Melissa for your great leadership.
Yes, if I can add, I was debating about whether or not to mention it. We did have a little in-person thank you we wanted to do, but it has now been postponed, so we'll do it in April. But yes, thank you.
Well, while we're on thanking people, Dan, the reason I reached out to you is I have my ever-present technology issues. And so I opt to go between my laptop and my iPad for things. I didn't realize until today that for some reason, everything I sent on my laptop last week is still there. So I'd like to thank everyone on this call and everyone from the administration and the board, because I had sent an email out to that effect, but it never left, for your participation last week in the Board of Finance session. I think everybody just did it, a terrific job. There were some difficult questions. I think we answered those questions quite succinctly. And I thought, having sat on the other side of the table, for 10 years, I thought everyone just did a great job, especially when we got some difficult questions. You answered them exactly the way I hoped you would. And special shout out to the superintendent, who was quite forthright in how she would handle any potential reduction in the budget. At the educational quality of what we provide the students in Weston will not be impacted by any reduction should they take place by the Board of Finance. I thought it was a terrific answer, Lisa. Thank you. And Dan, I am going to call you again tomorrow. You just have to answer your phone.
You got it.
Okay, thank you. The Weston Education Foundation, is there anything here?
You didn't use my acronym of WEF. WEF is supposed to be meeting tomorrow night, but the meeting has been pushed off until the 21st. So to be perfectly honest with you, I don't have anything to report right now.
Okie doke. So our next scheduled meeting is on the 18th of April. And we will hold that meeting in person to make up for this evening. And are there any pending items for the next meeting we should discuss tonight? Okie doke. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Terrific. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Here we go. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.